Ladies and gentlemen, I am officially running for President of the United States. And we are...
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back, Dog Mama. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm pissed, but I'm gonna just stop watching this stupid game.
Yes.
God, I hate Michigan. I hate the University of Michigan so bad with every fiber of my inch of my being. But with that being said, this is not about bashing on the cheating Michigan Wolverines. This is
No,
about the Matheau Moore trial, and we're
it
going to
is.
get into closing arguments because it was Christmas. Then I got banned for dangerous disinformation, and then now I'm back, and I figured it was high time that we
Yes.
get to the end.
Yes. So then we can figure out what we're gonna do next.
Right.
Or maybe not. I don't know. A short trial.
So there'll probably be one more episode realistically because there's some stuff I want to wrap up. But we'll at least hear the closing arguments tonight. Hi, Bob. So we'll get through the closing arguments tonight, see where we're at, and then I don't know, maybe hold the verdict till next week. I don't know. We'll see. I know you guys are on the edge of your seats and have no idea what it could possibly be. Oh wait, that's just Shenny.
Yes.
Who either really doesn't know or is playing the part really, really well. So, one of the two. But we'll see what.
I don't know.
We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, let's say hello and we'll get right into it. Ayo, what's up, buddy?
Hey, Ayo.
Dog Mama, hello.
I'm here.
Yeah. Allegedly.
Allegedly.
Scad.
Hey, Scad.
Hello. Ghostry. No, I was within my 5 minutes.
Yes, he was.
5 minutes. Digger, hello. Bobby, what's up, buddy? Freezing, but I'll listening soon. Why are you freezing? Well, thank you, Scad. I take it you got my email. I'll read it afterwards. And Queenie, what's up? So what we're basically doing tonight is we're gonna start with the judge. He's reading something and I forgot because like I said, it's been a while. We'll get through prosecution's closing, then defense is closing, and then we'll get to the rest of it. Real talk though, there seems to be some significant weather that's coming through the area, affecting many of us in the United States. So just stay safe out there, yo. And yeah. So it is winter in America. So we're probably gonna get some weather. Why is Dog Mama fucking? Oh, Dog Mama's gone. Oh shit. Well, Dog Mama, if you can make it back, I'm here. Oh, no worries. Take your time. So we're gonna get started, and hopefully Dog Mama will join back up with us. That one more person is super sick. King Supers? All right. So either way, we're going to get back into this and we'll get started. So
Manner of testifying. The reasonableness of the witness testimony, the opportunity the witness had to see, hear, and know the things concerning which they testify, their accuracy of memory, their frankness or lack of it, their intelligence, interest, and bias, if any, together with all the facts and circumstances surrounding the testimony of each witness. Using these tests, you will assign to the testimony of each witness whatever weight you deem proper. It is not necessary that the defendant take the witness stand in his own defense. He has a constitutional right not to testify. The fact that the defendant did not testify must not and cannot be considered by you for any purpose whatsoever, and you must not draw any inferences whatsoever from the fact he did not testify. You are not required to believe the testimony of any witness simply because that witness took an oath to tell the truth. You may believe or disbelieve all or any part of the testimony of any witness. It is your role to determine what testimony is worthy of belief and what testimony is not worthy of belief. The testimony of one witness, if believed by you, can be sufficient to prove any disputed fact. Allow me next to briefly comment upon certain expert testimony presented in this case. In the law, there are persons who are generally referred to as expert witnesses. Individuals who follow a profession
so this is
or
just
special
him
line of
reading
work
the thing.
because of their
So
training,
we've
knowledge,
heard this before.
education, and
So we're going
experience
to
in their profession.
we'll go ahead and go ahead.
Defendant
Go ahead.
Matheau Moore caused the death of Emily Noble as a proximate result of the defendants having committed the offense of felonious assault. I have already provided you the definition of the term cause, and you should rely on that earlier explanation and utilize that when deliberating on count 2.
Unless it is
an outcome that is a
Mathew
natural,
Moore.
logical, and reasonably foreseeable,
for the state of
rather than
Ohio.
one that is surprising or extraordinary.
I'm back.
The proximate result is
Oh,
one that
hey.
could, in light of ordinary
Yeah.
experience,
I knew that was gonna happen.
made by an ordinarily prudent person, meaning a sensible person or a person of sound judgment under the circumstances.
I thought he
commit
had
the
something
offense
important
of
to say,
felonious
but he's
assault
just reading the charges. So
Yeah, we don't need to.
Cause
if I skip
serious-
ahead, I'm going to get
They
screwed.
Mhm.
will have the opportunity to speak to
Oh.
you first, and at the conclusion of
Oh.
the arguments presented
Use
by
the
the
arrow
state, the
buttons.
defense will then have an opportunity to provide their closing.
Pieces fit together.
See?
You missed the first.
I told you.
Use the arrows
They'll have the
on your
opportunity to speak
keyboard.
to you first, and at the conclusion of the
Do you know how many
arguments
windows
presented
I
by
have
the
open
state,
right now?
Oh,
defense
yeah.
I don't know
will have
which
the
one
I
that was.
forgot.
provide their
I
closing
forgot.
argument to you. And likewise, because the state has the burden of proof, the law of Ohio permits the state to provide what's known as a rebuttal closing argument.
Hey, what's up,
I want you to
Dazzer?
listen carefully to what all counsel say, utilize it
Hey,
if you feel
Dazzer.
appropriate, but again, as you well know, I caution you that closing arguments as opening statements are not evidence, and you may not use what is said in closing argument by itself unless connected to a fact found by you to have been presented during this trial in the course of your deliberations. This time, please give your attention to counsel for the state, Mr. Sleeper.
Wish.com Wolverine. Brr.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, my colleague started this trial all the way back with opening statement, talking about a book and skipping to the end and looking at things. I'd like to talk about something a little different.
I did want to address something real quick. So as I said, I watched through and watch it quickly.
Mhm.
But I did see an interesting chat. There was because Law and Crime obviously has their chat up. People
Right.
chat in there, and I should have clipped it, but I didn't. And it was, I can't believe we're witnessing a man that killed his own wife is about to walk. And I'm like, how the hell
What?
do you, one, know that before closing? And two, if you know that he's like,
That
if
he
you're
didn't
that
do it?
certain that he didn't do it and he's gonna walk, then how do you know that he did it and he killed his wife? I was very confused by that particular comment, and I think it was just somebody who's not terribly brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
But so I just wanted to make reference to that. We'll get back to Wish.com Wolverine.
I'd like to talk to you about a movie. There's a movie called The Usual Suspects. Came out in the mid-90s, where Kevin Spacey is the main character, and the point of the story is he's narrating or discussing events while he's sitting in a police station.
Jeffrey's friend Kevin Spacey,
Now,
allegedly.
spoiler alert on this
That's what I was
30-year-old
gonna
movie
say.
is that at the end of the day, it turns out that Kevin Spacey's
I didn't
character
want to get yeeted.
was the main criminal mastermind the entire time. It only becomes clear as he walks out of the police station at the end of the movie
That's
the detective
basically
then
what
looks and
the comment
realizes
was.
that Kevin Spacey was
Scat.
weaving together a story based on a word that was on the bottom of a coffee cup and some things that were
Exactly.
posted on a bulletin.
What's up,
Mhm.
Toxic?
Hey,
At
toxic.
the very end of the movie, then, do you see the revelation? And then you can go back and look at the things that happened early on. And suddenly it all starts to make sense. And you see how those pieces fit together that you missed the first time.
Wait.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, in presenting a criminal case, we, as a state, have the burden of proof.
It
And
doesn't
we have to
make
call
sense.
witnesses to bring to you the evidence in the case. Each witness brings their own piece or pieces of the puzzle. Now, you'd be forgiven for the first week of this case, wondering what was going on. These witnesses seemingly coming in and just
Oh, that's
throwing
great.
random pieces of a puzzle onto a table. What's it leading to? What's the point? I submit to you that when you get to the end, it all starts to make sense.
It's like a good book.
And so what's the first thing you have to do when you're putting together a puzzle? You got to put together the border. You got to understand what you're working with. What are you looking at? Ladies and gentlemen, there's only two possible borders here to this puzzle. One is Emily Noble committed suicide. The other is Emily Noble died of a homicide. Let's talk about that. Emily Noble died of multiple injuries to her face and neck. That's uncontroverted testimony. Nothing to dispute the cause of death. This isn't a situation where she walked into the woods, had a heart attack, and fell into a cable that happened to be strung up from a tree branch.
How do you know that?
She's dead because of the injuries she sustained to her neck. And there's no accidental explanation for how they occurred. So there's two options, and only two options. She sustained those injuries to her neck because of suicide, or she sustained those injuries to her neck because of homicide. That's it, period. Those are the two choices. Now, the state of Ohio has the burden of proof. It's beyond a reasonable doubt. And we don't shy away from that burden.
Right.
Yeah.
And the judge has instructed you, and it's absolutely correct. Just because the defense put on some evidence, and just because they raise this argument of suicide, doesn't shift the burden to them in any way. It's our job to disprove suicide beyond a reasonable doubt. But when you listen to their arguments, when you listen to the testimony they did present, you have to ask yourself, was it reasonable? Does it make any sense in light of the other testimony? Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that the evidence is clear and that it proves beyond reasonable doubt that Emily Noble did not die of suicide. And let's talk about how you know that. First of all, there's no note. No communication of any kind with anyone. Hey, I'm really
That's a
struggling.
requirement.
Hey, I'm having bad days.
You know.
Hey, I just don't know if I can go on anymore. No goodbyes to loved ones. No explanation. Nothing. Nothing whatsoever. You'll have search history on her phone for 6 months, roughly. What's on there? Not a single thing about suicide. Nothing. It's about plants and weeds and foraging. Well, wait a second. There is that T-shirt with a quote on it about going into the woods. That's it? That's the evidence of suicide? That she was thinking of suicide?
You
She looked
don't
at
have to
a
prove
T-shirt with a quote
anything.
about the woods sometime in February? That's ridiculous. Nothing on that phone whatsoever to suggest that she's suicidal.
He
They don't
should
have
go
to
back
prove
Who
into
else
the
tells you
woods.
that?
Suicide.
Her friends. Now, guess what? The only person who could come in and talk about how
What
she
I
was
said.
doing the entire time is dead. Emily Noble's dead. She can't come talk to you
No,
about it.
no.
So we have to bring in people that know snapshots, pieces, that see her at various times throughout the years. And what they all tell you. Did
And
any
it's
one of them
better
come
being
in and
around
tell
too
you
long.
that they had concerns that she was suicidal? Concerns that she was going to
Everything
harm herself?
turns
No.
upside down.
We're okay
You
with
know who
light
else tells you
stalking
that?
here.
You know who else tells you that?
Light
The
stalking.
defendant. You know when he tells you? The 911 call. He calls right away. He's talking to the dispatcher, and they say, did you guys have an argument? No. Well, no. Oh, was she depressed? No. He tells the dispatcher right away when
Exactly.
he calls law enforcement that his wife was not depressed. When Officer Hollis responds to the scene, he tells him that she was the squarest, straightest person he knows. Now, Later on,
How
when he's
can, how
talking
can you
about
be
it,
straight
he's
square?
asked, well, she's an emotional person, but no more than any other woman. Even the defendant
What?
doesn't bring forth right away talking about her being depressed or being suicidal. Nothing. Nothing. Now, Emily Noble had been through a lot of trauma. No dispute about that. Awful, awful things. Starting from friends dying of AIDS in the 90s, her first husband killing himself, her dad slipping and falling and hitting his head and never recovering, her mom dying in a car wreck less than a year later. Terrible things. But what do you hear about that? That each time Emily Noble overcame that tragedy, overcame that trauma, and
Yeah,
continued
things
on
don't build up.
to see the joy in
Ever.
life and the bright things in the world.
Never.
She got through it every single time. Every single time. Until she married that man. And now suddenly she doesn't survive the trauma. Who was the first witness you heard from? Amy Thomas, Emily's sister. And she told
We
you
didn't know her.
about their relationship, about they've been around. And she told you that Emily had seen what happens to the people who are left behind when someone commits suicide. You know that. Her first husband committed suicide. Her stepson committed suicide. She knows what happens. And she had conversations on multiple occasions with Amy where she promised that she would never harm herself, that she would never commit suicide. So what is it that would allegedly lead her to commit suicide in this instance? Well, it's Joey, the stepson she lived with for a little over a year. That's the one she can't overcome? Now, the defendant, in what I would submit to you is one of the biggest understatements I've ever heard, says in his interview, after my son died, there was some tension and stress. She dealt with it differently than I did. Yeah. How did Emily deal with it? Emily took time off work.
He's gross.
Emily went to counseling.
Mm-hmm.
Emily told the counselor repeatedly that she was concerned for her husband's well-being. Now, you're going to have some records of some of these counseling records presented to you with no context, no testimony, but they contain in there statements.
Channel
that
does
Emily made
not
to her
give any
therapist.
advice.
None. Never.
Look at him. There's not a single mention
I still have
anywhere
a cot in Dog Mama's bushes.
of suicidal thoughts or suicidal ideation. Not a single one. In fact, what they submit to you show is somebody who was going there,
Is that
working
what
through
that
the issues,
is?
and reported getting
Yes.
better. Who
Don't
went
move
back
it.
to work
It's
part-time and then says
great
that she's
spot.
ready to go back to work full-time.
But it's like 24
They
degrees
reflect that she's-
outside and snowing.
Trying to eat healthy, that she's doing yoga, that
Worth
she's
it.
going out into nature, and she's doing the things that she needs to do to put herself on the right path. And what's the defendant's dealing with it differently? He's unemployed, sitting at home, getting drunk.
I actually could, but I'm not going to.
Just ask yourself for a second. We told you
Damn it, Bobby.
that somebody in that house, that one of these two adults committed suicide. Isn't it more likely to be the defendant? The one whose own son committed suicide, who never saw counseling, who never
Thank
did
you,
anything
come again.
to address the issues, would sit at home and drink. But instead, they want you to believe that the individual who confronted those issues, who sought therapy, who was doing things to get better, is the one who just couldn't take it. That's not reasonable.
It's kind of dirty.
ridiculous.
I don't like him.
I know. He's so gross.
Mm-hmm.
You heard repeatedly that Emily was healthy, was working out, was taking walks. She's eating dandelions and weeds and other things, which is apparently healthy for you. Probably better than I've been eating in the last 2 weeks. But you heard testimony that she said she was in the best shape of her life. And what'd you hear?
She's probably taller than you were,
Celeste
too.
said that Emily had a pin taken out of her ankle, that she finally didn't have that pain anymore. You can see on the body cam when they discuss that, the defendant doesn't even really know if his wife has a doctor. Doesn't seem to really know or care where she works or know any of her coworkers or any of that. But Celeste does. And wouldn't you know it?
Agreed.
Wouldn't you know it? The forensic anthropologist at Ohio State, Dr. Agnew, looks at those remains and says, there's evidence of previous hardware in the ankle that's no longer there. Emily was in a great place. What about any of this would lead you for a second to think that she was going to commit suicide? She was going to kill herself. And what about the timing? What about the timing? May 24th, Emily's birthday. May 25th, the other day that she and her sister Amy are the same age. May 26th, Amy's birthday. You heard testimony that this was a special time for them every year of their lives, from the very beginning when Emily was brought home from the hospital on Amy's birthday. That they would call and talk and have a special conversation, that they're the same age in those days. This wasn't a random day or a random time for Emily Noble. These dates were important to her, meaningful to her. So remember that sister that she promised that she would never commit suicide to? Now Emily, without warning, without speaking to anyone, without a note, goes off and hangs herself during that special time? To do what? Inflict maximum pain on her sister?
What?
Why in the world, if she was going to commit suicide, would she do it then? That's a special and happy time for her.
This guy is absolute garbage.
Not a time when she would harm herself. Let's talk briefly right now about the defendant's version of events. And as you might
Well, yeah,
imagine,
they
we'll
leave
come
a
back to this
note
again
and they
later.
search
Well, what's the
Google.
defendant say?
Put a big giant fucking sign out.
You gotta love the body cam.
Obviously.
Gotta love the body cam because it shows you what the defendant's saying, how he's acting, and you can see those interactions inside the house.
JP's
I'll
got
tell
a
you
point
what,
with Robin
I want
Williams.
you to go back and watch this.
Yeah.
Officer Hollis is inside the house. He looks in to the master bedroom and he says, the bed's made. I submit to you the defendant, before he even walks around to where he can see, before he even looks in there, he goes, oh yeah, I just noticed that. I just noticed that. And then he says, she must have made the bed. Because remember, his version of events is they come home from uptown, they have sex, they go to bed, he wakes up in the middle of the night, has to go pee, goes out in the other room, right? So his version of events is his wife, Emily Noble, was in that bed sleeping around 1:30 in the morning. But that bed is made. So, oh yeah, she must have made the bed. So, ladies and gentlemen, the person who has repeatedly triumphed over trauma in her life, the person who has sought treatment, the person who is, by the defendant's own words, is not depressed or had never said anything that would have caused him to call law enforcement to try to get his wife help that she was going to harm herself. The person who's healthy and in the best shape of her life. The person who just went out to celebrate her birthday.
Something I'll look into for sure.
Special time of year in her life. She wakes up randomly in the morning, never touches her phone to respond to any other questions or comment or text that she'd received, makes herself a drink, makes the bed, and wanders off into the woods to hang herself.
Sounds about right.
Yeah.
What part of that is a reasonable explanation of what happened? What part of that is reasonable? I submit to you it's not reasonable. It's ridiculous. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? You don't even have to stop there. You heard from a man named Dr. Sept. Let me briefly summarize his testimony. That cord, that ligature, it is impossible for it to cause the injuries to Emily Noble's neck. He says, the quadruple fracture pattern, the fracture on both sides of the hyoid and both sides of the thyroid cartilage, has never been documented in somebody under 100 pounds in an incomplete hanging. In fact, he tells you in one study, they didn't even document a single fracture of any kind in the neck for any hanging of an individual under 110 pounds. Even complete hangings where the full body weight is being put on that ligature in the neck. Not a single one. Allow me to briefly summarize the cross-examination of Dr. Smock. He spelled Dr. Hardin's name wrong. All of the bluster, all of the theatrics, it all crumbled when confronted with the testimony of Dr. Smock, who I'd submit to you is the single most qualified person that you heard from in this entire trial. He is the expert on these things. So on strangulation, on staged crime scenes, and he tells you, based on his training and experience from all over the world, that this is a staged suicide. And what's the response to that? Dr. Garvin, I'd submit to you, she's board certified in garbage in, garbage out. She didn't do a full analysis. She did what she termed a case review and spent a lot of time on the witness stand talking about that case review. It contained earth-shattering revelations that Dr. Agnew didn't use 2 standard deviations when determining the age of the remains, or that she only used one method in determining the ancestry. Who cares? On cross-examination, Dr. Garvin admitted that none of that impacted her ability to review the trauma in the case. Well, the pictures of the trauma anyway, of course, because she didn't bother to look at the actual bones, but the pictures.
That's nuts. Huh.
For all the talk that she had about best practices of not using hydrogen peroxide, and if you read that, it actually talks about not using hydrogen peroxide because you want to
How
consider
does that
the
work?
possible
I don't know.
hazards to the user of the substance, not of the bones. But for all that talk of best practices, she didn't follow the simplest, most straightforward best practice in forensic anthropology. Look at the bones. Look at the bones. So she looks at 2D pictures of this. And what'd she say? Well, she assumed that they were gone. She testified that she has spent 50 hours researching and looking at things here and talking to colleagues and all that, but never once at any point thought, man, I've looked at these pictures and I don't see the same thing as the person who actually looked at the bones. Maybe I should ask to look at the bones. No.
There were bones missing, though.
Let's
Right.
talk about 2 parts of her report that matter. The facial fractures, the nose. One person came in and told you they examined the bones under a microscope. They told you that
Well, he takes Flintstone's
can
kids
imagine,
vitamins, so he has big, strong,
sometimes you
healthy
have
bones.
to turn things, get it in a different light, look at it from a different angle to be able to see all the detail. That's what Dr. Agnew did.
He doesn't like the purple one.
Dr. Garvin took a piece of paper and looked at it and said,
That's my favorite.
I don't see the same thing that that person did who was actually looking at the bones, following the best practices.
Yeah, where she passed.
It's one thing.
Magically
It's one
fucking
thing to look at
appears.
a photograph
That was a tooth
and
fairy, though.
say, you know what? I see
Could
the
have
same
been.
thing that person did to look at the actual bones. And spoiler alert, that's what Dr. Garvin says with regard to the injuries of the neck. It's something entirely
Oh,
different
no.
to say, I'm looking at this photograph and I don't see it. And then look at the way that she wrote it in her report.
That is an ugly ass woman.
No evidence of perimortem trauma to the craniofacial region. But then all the rest of the
Very
report is,
ugly.
well, it's no definitive evidence. No definitive evidence. Not the same thing as saying no evidence whatsoever. Now, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, the facial trauma would be a good fact for the state because you don't get a fracture in your nose from putting a cord around your neck in a suicidal hang. But don't for a second think that that's the linchpin of this entire case. The nose fractures aren't what caused the death. That's what happened in the neck. Now, I want you to see if you can spot the difference in these 2 sentences. 1, I did not see anything inconsistent with perimortem trauma to the thyroid cartilage and the hyoid.
Did he just say Nazi?
Or I agree that the thyroid, cartilage, and hyoid fractures are perimortem.
Maybe.
The first one was Dr. Garvin's testimony on direct examination. Made it sound like she just didn't see anything to dispute Dr. Agnew's qualifications. But in her report, she literally wrote that she agrees that those are perimortem. So what does she attempt to tell you then about those perimortem fractures? That you can't rule out hanging as the cause. Why?
Are we in regular speed?
Because somewhere a 240-pound man had those fractures?
No,
Oh,
no, we're not.
Oh my gosh.
I think we're at 125.
Dr. Agnew, excuse me, Dr. Garvin,
Yeah,
can
we're
write-
125.
she can choose any study she wants.
He's so slow.
Oh yeah,
And writing
he's
her
from
report,
Ohio.
she's under no obligation to spell out everything she's ever read or where she's ever
Yeah.
gone or anything she's ever learned. She doesn't have to type it all out. But she chose to type out something in support of her conclusion. She picked one study that she says supports what she's talking about. And ladies and gentlemen, that study says nothing of the sort. The Zetkova study, in reviewing 178 cases of hanging, found the quadruple fracture pattern in 3.4% of cases. So already we're talking about in the study that she cited, 96% of hangings did not have those fractures. 96%. Dr. Garvin believed it was important to determine how many of those were incomplete and how many of them were complete hangings. So she emailed the study author. And they wrote back. 3 out of the 6. 3 were incomplete. But that's not all they wrote. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you there's a thing that's called a lie of omission. It's when you give a statement that's true, but you admit the other important facts. You're not outright saying something that's not true. When Dr. Garvin wrote in her report, 3 out of the 6 were incomplete hangings, that is true. But what'd she leave out? The next part, that the author of the study in his one sentence reply said, by the way, 2 of them are overweight. She leaves that out of her report, but admits that age-adjusted weight is a statistically significant factor in determining whether or not you're going to see fractures. Even worse, that study cites another study that says in cases of individuals under 110 pounds, they didn't find a single fracture. Not one. When you look at the underlying data of the study she cites, it's clear it doesn't support the conclusion. Even within that study, there's something that directly contradicts what Dr. Garvin ends up telling. Because again, we don't care if somebody somewhere in a hanging had that quadruple fracture pattern. Who cares if it's happened ever? What's important is, did it happen to Emily Noble? Did it happen to this 100-pound female who was in an incomplete hanging?
God, I hope
Call,
so.
Dr. Smock testified.
He's
Said,
a terrible
there
person.
is no such case.
I don't think he
documented.
realizes it though.
There is no such
You don't
case.
think you realize that you're that bad?
And
No.
Who agreed with it?
Eh.
Dr. Gar. I asked her on cross-examination if in the 50 hours of searching and then talking to colleagues, if you'd found a single study that ever had an individual under 100 pounds with this quadruple fracture pattern, you would have brought it with you to court. She said yes. The fact you don't have that tells you all you need to know. Even more evidence that this isn't suicide.
Yeah, he's too dense.
That proves beyond a reasonable doubt that it's not suicide. Dr. Hickman, the Delaware County coroner. Now, you've heard some questions that seem to give the implication that somehow the state paid for an expert report, and after that, then Dr. Hickman issues a death certificate. That's not what Dr.
See,
Hickman
I
tells
tend to agree, Digger. I think he
Dr.
knows
Hickman tells you
exactly what
that
the
when
hell
he
he's
got the
saying.
report initially talking about the quadruple fractures, he already in mind was saying, this is not suicide. Dr. Hickman might have been the only witness in this trial that really did a good job explaining what this hanging would have looked like. For as many times as defense counsel was down on the ground demonstrating the position of Emily's body, I didn't see her a single time show what would have had to happen to put the weight on the neck, to constrict that ligature. Because it isn't enough to say, I've got a cord tied around the tree and I just rest my head in it. I'm going to do something to put pressure on the neck. And how did Dr. Hickman describe that? That it's a lean into, that you have to lean into the cord, into the ligature. In a complete hanging, you're on a chair or a stool or something gets kicked out from under you and you can't touch the ground, all of your body weight is in the neck. In an incomplete hanging, not all of your body weight is there. And just having a cord around your neck and staying on the ground doesn't do anything. You got to lean into it. You got to do something to make that pressure.
But her hands were underneath
Ladies and gentlemen,
clothing.
Right.
look at the
So
photos.
Yeah, it's up Queen
No end
and
of the
Omni
cord
over on Ramble.
is tied around the tree. One, what I call the traditional USB is down on Lee Noble's back. The other end of the cord, what I call a micro USB, the Detective Grubb said fit into some of the old cell phone devices in the house, has this
No, but I'll
matte
get it for
plastic
you.
inside. And
I have
you'll
some
a real
cool
cord.
shit
Get
coming
another
up with
look at it.
that, Light Rain. Stay tuned because that's
The
going to be
only thing
fun
holding
coming up.
that entire contraption together, loop tied in the middle of the cord, hanging down from the tree, fat plastic piece caught, just like that. Not tied, not knotted, just that.
Very
This
true.
fat plastic piece
Yes.
caught in a loop. Ladies and gentlemen, you don't need to be a doctor. You don't need to have any specialized knowledge.
But you don't have
Just look at it and
pictures
say,
of how it was taken
"Ridiculous."
down.
That's not a manner in which anyone would hang themselves.
Yeah, I thought so.
It's not a way that somebody would commit suicide. Emily Noble's death was not suicide. Would submit to you, that's what the evidence proves, beyond reasonable doubt. It was not suicide. Dr. Smock tells you that. He says this was a staged suicide. No one else. Dr. Hickman tells you this is a homicide. This is manual strangulation.
Mm-hmm.
The defense witness
Yeah.
isn't in a position to opine on that. A forensic anthropologist doesn't tell you cause or manner of death. The only thing that Dr. Garvin is saying is that you can't rule out hanging as a mechanism. Not suicidal hanging, not anything else, just saying a hanging can't be ruled out. And again, I'd submit to you that her opinion is not supported by anything that you've heard of any of the literature, and it's not supported by the only thing that she cited in her own study. So, ladies and gentlemen, if this is not suicide, what is it? It's a homicide. In order for someone to be held criminally liable in the state of Ohio for a homicide, we have some statutes. And the ones we're talking about here are murder. And I want to give you a little piece of it just to help orient and understand what we're talking about. Count 1, murder. Count 2, murder. They are both called murder, but they have different elements, different things to look at. Count 1 of murder is for purposely causing the death of Emily Noble. And you heard the definition of purpose. Purposely is when it's your specific intention to cause a certain result. Now, what do you have that reflects on purpose? Dr. Smock tells you what it takes to strangle someone to death. It's not an accident. It's not a brief process. In order to strangle someone to death, you must maintain continuous pressure for somewhere between a minute and 2 minutes to cause death. That's purpose, ladies and gentlemen. It says, the purpose with which a person does an act is known only to him unless he expresses it to others or indicates it by his conduct. Anyone who is causing a death by manual strangulation must maintain that pressure for more than a minute. That's done purposely. Count 2, the other murder statute, doesn't require that proof of purpose. It requires proof that the death was the proximate cause of a felonious assault that you'll see in count 3. So
Or
2 and 3
people
go
can
together.
be bad at their
You
job.
find the defendant is guilty
Yeah.
of felonious assault for knowingly causing
lawyer can
serious
suck.
physical harm. Then you have to look and see if that serious physical harm led to the death. That's what the
big
difference
one.
is between count 1 murder and count 2 murder. And again, you heard the testimony of Dr. Smock
They can suck a
about
big
the
one.
dangers of strangulation, about what happens as you put your hands or arm around someone's neck and squeeze. What happens to blood flow? What happens to oxygen flow? What happens with risks of hospitalization and death? That's serious physical harm. So even if you weren't convinced that this is a purposeful murder, if you're convinced that the defendant knowingly caused serious physical harm to Emily Noble, and that as a result of that offense, as a proximate result, she died, that's still murder in count 2. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we put together the board. We put together the outside of the pieces of the puzzle. This is not suicide.
Oh, Bobby, he's still
And now I
sexy.
ask you to look at the other pieces. Look at the other evidence now through that lens. Now that you know this is not suicide, let's look at the other pieces. This is a staged suicide scene. Who on planet Earth would have an incentive to stage a suicide other than the defendant? Random, unknown suspect, the Westerville Strangler, who's manually strangling women in the woods. Wouldn't take the time, the effort, the care to stage a suicide. What would be the point? Who
This is
else, a
stupid.
random other individual, would have the tools and the items nearby or ready at hand in order to stage a suicide? The only person that would have
Westerville
any
Ohio
incentive
Strangler.
to do that is the defendant. But it's not just staging the scene in the woods. I'd submit to you the evidence shows he was staging the scene the whole time. What do I mean? The defense version of events is that his wife, sometime after 1:30 in the morning, because that's when he saw her when he went to the other room, had to get up and go hang herself. Now,
The neighbor.
what do you need first? You need an opportunity for your wife to get up and leave the house without you knowing about it. Right? If you're awake, she couldn't have left without you knowing. So what's he say? Well, I went to sleep in the other room. What's he say? I took a sleeping pill. And he texts that even to a friend of his. Oh, I'm about to be out. I took my pill. And then he says he slept in unusually or abnormally late. How convenient. How convenient that the one day you sleep in is the day that your wife decides to get up in the morning and wander off into the woods and hang herself.
What the fuck?
So he's staging that scene with the text message he sends to his
Whoa,
friend.
don't be
and he's
mean to
staging that scene with his
amoebas.
story about,
Jesus.
I can't possibly know what happened early in the morning with my wife because I was sleeping later than I normally do. What else do you need? You can't know where your wife is when you wake up. They live in an 800 or 900 square foot condo. You saw how small it is. You wake up in the morning, you go to the bathroom and look out the door. Oh, hey, my wife's not here. But no, that's not the testimony. What's he tell you that he did? What's he tell you? I woke up And I was laying in bed, and instead of getting off the couch and talking to my wife about our plans for the day, I texted her, are we going to this party or what? In an 800 square foot condo? Hey, are we going to this party or what? And then what's he do? Hits that Find My iPhone app, right? Because it'll give you, look, now
I
when I
text
pull
my
out my
husband
phone
while
records,
we're in
if
the
anybody
same
ever
house
looks at it,
all the
see, I
time.
sent her this text. I didn't know where she was, and I did Find My iPhone.
I don't find that weird.
But then he still never gets up? He still doesn't walk around? 3 hours later, he texts to this phone that he knows he's got no response on, that he knows is sitting in the house. I guess we aren't going? And what's he say about that in his interview? He says, I guess we aren't going. Where are you?
Yeah.
Well, I didn't say the where are you part. Yeah, he forgot that. But again, it tries to leave a record.
Oh, Scad, you are on a roll.
Stage scene to say, look, hey, I was in this other room. I woke up at 11 something. I sent a text. I had to do Find My iPhone. I had no idea where my wife was. What else do you need?
Excuse me.
You know that you staged a scene to look like suicide. You know that there's a cord. So Emily Noble, if she was going to go kill herself, what does she need to be looking for? Something to hang herself with. Right? My wife got up, wandered off in the woods. I know that I've staged it to look like a suicide. I know that she's hanging by a cord. What does she need? She needs to have found a cord. What's the defendant draw Officer Hollis's attention to? Where does he take him? Right into the garage. And what's he point out? An orchard extension cord. And he says, this is out of place. This isn't where it's supposed to be. This used to be here. Watch it again in the body cam. Officer Hollis immediately says, can she even reach that? Watch the defendant as how he has to reach to get that cord even off that hook. And he says, I didn't do it.
A step stool?
I didn't move this. But you know what we do know? He was moving things
It's not
right
at
in
all
that
what he
area,
said.
even while law enforcement was at the scene. Even after they'd already responded, even after he's already trying to talk to them about what happened, supposedly to his wife. That cooler is moved. There is now a flashlight there. And it isn't just that he moved it. It's that he, at the end, Officer Hollis and the defendant are standing out in the driveway. And he says, maybe I'm crazy, but you just got to come look at this. He leads him right there. He wants Officer Hollis to see it. And look, here's this orange cord. My wife must have been looking for something to hang herself. But we know he's the one moving things around in that area. And it's not just the cooler. He even says, watch it. He even says, he shakes it, wobbles the cooler a little bit. He says, oh, even this isn't where it should be. Or she wouldn't like that. And he's the one that moved it. So, ladies and gentlemen, he keeps staging the scene throughout. What else is important? When was the last time Emily Noble was seen? Here's the testimony of John Kramer. John Kramer said that when he first saw law enforcement, after he brought his dad home that he was taking care of, he sees the officer there, and he says, I saw Emily Noble on the morning of May 25th. And he tells you he goes inside, gets his dad situated, and immediately comes back out and says he's not sure. You heard that he told
They
that
make magnets for.
to law enforcement right away, that he told that to law enforcement later, and he told you that from the witness stand. And this isn't a situation that a year and a half or 2 years later, he's changed his mind about what he saw. He told them that immediately, that he wasn't certain. And how do you know that? How do you know that John Kramer had already said that right away? Because it's in the interview with the defendant. In the interview with the defendant, the detective says that no, the neighbor's not sure he saw her that morning. And what is the defendant's immediate response? Not concerned for his wife. Not wondering what that might mean for where she is. So that makes it look bad for me, I guess. So that makes it look bad for me, I guess. Right. Because he was hoping to hang his hat on the fact that somebody saw Emily or thinks they saw Emily after he killed her. Ladies and gentlemen, you look at the timelines on the phones.
I'm just curious. How
I
long
would
does
submit to
this
you the
asshole
timelines
go
of the
for?
phones conclusively prove that the defendant lied repeatedly to law
Too
enforcement
long.
about what happened.
Like another
Repeatedly.
20 minutes. Seems
Emily
like
receives
minutes
messages
too
at
long.
6:30 in the evening on the 24th that are not read until 4:40 p.m.
40
the
minutes
next day.
too long.
Yes.
There's nothing on Emily's phone to show any user-initiated activity after 7 p.m. on the 24th. Nothing. Until the defendant's on. The defendant's phone shows that after they came back from Uptown, out celebrating his wife's birthday, that he has a 34-minute phone conversation with a friend of his. A conversation that is never mentioned a single time in all of the different versions of events that he talks about. We're told that, although the defendant says initially, I told Officer Hollis she wouldn't go out by herself at night. But then he thinks about it, and in his interview, he says, well, and he was like, does she ever go out at night, by herself?
It's hard to grade.
But she does. At times now that I think about it, especially if she's got a little buzz and she's drinking, she'll get that, and she'll grab a flashlight, and she'll go on this walk and come back with the forge. Who told you that Emily Noble went for a walk that evening? That he was sure about? John Kramer. Emily Noble comes home, goes on a walk, while the defendant's on a long phone call and playing around on his phone. After he gets off that, there's a 40-minute gap of time where there's no activity on his phone. Between 8:42 p.m. and 9:23 p.m. 40-minute gap. Defendant knows the place where Emily goes to forage, knows where he could find her. Ladies and gentlemen, I submit to you that's an opportunity at that time for him to go leave the house and to go confront her in the woods. And where the physical evidence shows she was struck in the face, causing fractures to her nose, and she was manually strangled, causing 4 fractures to her neck. After that time at 9:23, the defendant's phone screen turns on once or twice, and then between 9:45 p.m. and 1:11 in the morning, there's a 3-hour and 25-minute gap of time when there is no activity on his phone. Time to stage the scene. And then the uncontroverted evidence. The uncontroverted evidence is that he is on his phone pretty much the entirety of the night. You'll have the timeline, look at it. And it's not just loading apps or doing other things, it's sending messages, orientation changes on the phone, plugging in the phone. He's on his phone all night. Until when? 5:52 in the morning, he starts the YouTube app. And you'll see on the timeline that runs until 8:40 in the morning. 5:52.
I just showed
Still
it's hard to
awake.
grade. Did you guys not see
Activated
it?
something on his phone.
Yeah, I saw it.
Oh, chat's
What
still
happens 8
talking
minutes
about
later?
it.
Emily's
Oh,
alarm.
I
You think
saw it.
the defendant, after being awake the entire night, loaded up YouTube at 5:52 and was totally asleep by 6? Remember, if Emily got up and she made the bed and made herself a drink and went off to commit suicide, she's got to be moving around sometime in that morning. And the defendant's awake right up until that time. What else is there, though? At 8:40 in the morning, the defendant's back on his phone. And what happened at 8:41? Amy Thomas sent a Facebook message in a chat that included both the defendant and Emily. I want you to think about that. Come back to that in a minute. Emily's device shows no user-initiated activity until 4:40 in the afternoon. None. The health data shows no movement. The phone doesn't go anywhere from the time when they get back from Uptown in the night until 4:40 in the afternoon. And what do you remember happens at 4:40? How do you know that all this stuff in the timeline is what it says?
Oh yeah, Scat, he put one up.
That Emily Noble received in the evening of May 24th were not read, did not show up as read on the phone until 4:40 in the afternoon the next day. What happens at that time? We know the defendant says that phone has been there. His wife has not been there. At this point, he's allegedly searched around. At this point, he's the one on her phone. And if you go into the timeline and look at 4:41 in the afternoon on the 25th, the SMS app, the text messaging app, is activated on Emily's phone. That's how those messages show up red. It wasn't because of anything that Emily Noble did. It was because of the defendant. And what else is important about that? This Facebook message. Remember, the defendant, here's another thing he tries to latch onto. Oh, Amy Thomas says the Facebook message that I sent shows that it was viewed by both of you. It was viewed by Emily and the defendant. Right? And the defendant says, well, and she must have been alive 8:40 in the morning. Now remember, to be on her phone, it doesn't move, it doesn't leave the house, that would mean Emily Noble would have to be at home at 8:40 in the morning.
Yeah, AP.
There's a bunch of user activity again starting at 8:40 on the defendant's phone. The defendant would have to be awake too. So there goes the, I was sleeping in the other room and don't know anything about my wife getting up and leaving the house. But more importantly than that, look at the timeline. That Facebook Messenger app on Emily's phone is not activated until late in the afternoon when the defendant gets on the phone, goes into Facebook Messenger, and sends a message to the guy whose house they were supposed to be at on Memorial Day. That's when that message shows up red. Not because of anything Emily Noble did. Look at the phone. The Facebook app flicks on when you receive a message, but it doesn't show any other user-initiated activity. And you heard that testimony from the cell phone forensic specialist. The only time that that app is open and manipulated and a message is sent is when the defendant's on the phone. That's not evidence that Emily was alive that morning. Ladies and gentlemen, look at the other statements of the defendant. Again, I would submit to you, know that he's lying to law enforcement based on what is on the phones, because it does not match his story. Defendant tells you you're in Uptown.
SCAD.
Home.
Probably true.
Look. So he tells the officer. So he wants people to believe. What's he saying on that Signal app? What's he saying in that chat to his buddy?
No, come on.
2 weeks before this. 2 weeks. My marriage is over. We don't fuck anymore. 2 weeks prior, he's saying his marriage is over. That they don't have sex. And then he wants the officer to believe, well, no, we went uptown, we had a good time, came back, had sex. What's he take to Officer Hollis? Again, love the body cam. We came back, went to sleep in our bed. Our bed. Really? You ever called the bed that you sleep in with your spouse? Somebody else's? Not yours? Not ours?
Oh.
I'll tell you, how else do you know he's sleeping in that other room? How do you know? He's got a blanket in there. The hamper for his dirty clothes are in that bathroom, not over in the master bedroom. In fact, go back when you listen to his interview. He refers to that as the master bedroom. Her bedroom.
Yes, he did, SCAD. He was referring to the comment that Matt made.
Submit to you, the evidence is clear. Neither one of them was ever in that bed on the evening of May 24th. When Officer Hollis looks in there and he sees that the bed is made, that stands out to the officer. But I'll stand out to you too. Because either that bed is made because it was made in the morning of the 24th and nobody ever got back into it, or that bed is made because on the morning of May 25th, right before she decides to commit suicide, Emily Noble made the bed.
That's possible.
No one ever got into that bed that evening. Ladies and gentlemen, what else do I want you to focus on and think about? The defendant's behavior shows that he knows she's dead. He knows Emily's dead. What's he do?
Sorry, my wife needed me real quick for a second. This guy can eat a dick. That's the one thing that bothered Matt. And he asked, he was noticeably taken aback by that comment and regrets it heavily. And we talked to him about it on stream. And for this asshole to bring it up, score cheap points, like this guy can go straight to hell. Sorry, absolutely. That pisses me off. That's a low blow. That's some bullshit. So Anyways, fuck off, Bobby. Back to the show.
First of all, you hear testimony from John Kramer that he's smoking in the house. He's smoking in the house. That Emily would never allow that. And you heard a lot of questions about, can you see ashtrays on these different photos or anything else? You know what I submit to you that shows? The lack of those formal ashtrays is that people didn't smoke in that condo. They did not. That was routine. It was not a routine practice to smoke in that house. Well, there's no ashtray in this picture, no ashtray in this picture. Well, guess what? There's a bunch of empty beer cans. There's a sink, a trash can. I mean, let's not pretend that the only thing you could possibly ash a cigarette into is a real ashtray. What else does he do that he tells you that he knows she's dead?
No, he only knows
He's
relationships
asked
with
to
men.
rate his marriage on a scale of 1 to 10. over the last 6
Allegedly.
months. And he says it's an 8. And he says, well, there's some old texts or maybe we're whatever, but this whole Corona thing really
Hey, what's up,
brought
Devel?
us closer
Hey,
together.
Devel.
And without any other question, the question was rate your marriage on a 1 to 10. I did not hurt my wife. I did not hurt my wife. I loved her. May 27th. May 27th. Speaking about his wife in past tense.
What's up,
If your
Jacob,
loved
over
one
on
is
Rumble?
missing,
Hey, Jacob.
you don't know where they are. If you're trying to find them, how would you ever be referring to them in the past tense after such a short period of time? And he does it in other places too. Oh, she
No,
loved
he
me.
doesn't.
Mm-mm. No.
He talks about her in the past tense because he knows she's dead. And one other thing about his behavior on the 24th. Ladies and gentlemen, I ask you to put yourself in these shoes for a minute. You wake up, your spouse is gone. You don't know where they are. Maybe you remain calm for a while. You see what's going on. You don't know. You wait. And the minutes and the hours pass by. And you don't hear from them or see them. And you know a place, a short walk from your residence where they like to go. And you don't ever walk it? You don't ever go out there yourself? The defendant wants you to believe that he checked to see if his guns were there, that he checked up into the attic, that he's looking all over the house, trying to see where his wife could be. He knows right when Officer Hall shows up. He talks about this walking path that they go on. And yet at no point in the 6 hours, even by his own version of events, he's awake before he calls law enforcement or before he calls Celeste.
That's an interesting
He
revelation,
never
Scad.
goes and looks at the
What?
place where he thinks his wife might be.
I was wrong. I was very, very wrong.
There's only one explanation.
I was
One.
too.
That he can't be the one to find her. There is no other reason why you wouldn't go looking in a place where you think your loved one is after they've been missing all day. It's that close to your house.
I'm not a biologist, though.
Me neither.
And then, ladies and gentlemen, I'd submit to you, he pretty much tells Westerville Police Department where she is.
The fuck?
Let's be blunt. Makes the Westerville Police Department look pretty bad. Those initial days of searching. Nobody got in that part of the woods where Emily Noble's remains were eventually found. It does. It looks pretty bad. But you know who it looks worse for? The defendant. The defendant, even on the knock and talk, when he goes out for a walk with the detectives, and he says, I don't know, you'd have to go in there to look. Not that I'm thinking she's in there.
Don't apologize.
No, it's great.
When he talks in his interview,
I needed
what
it.
would Emily do? Well, she'd go into the woods and hang herself. What a lucky guess. What What a lucky guess. He gets where she'd be and how she'd do it. And remember, this isn't a suicide. This is a staged suicide. So how much even luckier would he have had to have guessed where she was and how she'd look if it was some other random stranger who had committed the murder? Ladies and gentlemen, the defendant in his message said that his marriage is over. His son committed suicide. If Emily's leaving him, if he's getting kicked out, he's got nothing left. Nowhere else to go. Ladies and gentlemen, there's one last thing I want you to think about. And that's the defendant's words in the last part of the interview with Westville Police Department. What's he say? I know I did not hurt her. I didn't do anything to her. So the other thing that I can think of is that she did something to herself. I know I did not hurt her. I didn't do anything to her. So the only thing I think of is she did something to herself. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to consider that statement in reverse. Because I submit to you that the evidence shows, beyond a reasonable doubt, she didn't do anything to herself. Now, I submit to you the evidence shows that the defendant did hurt her. That Emily Noble died of a manual strangulation. That her death was staged to look like a suicide. And the only person who would have done that is a defendant. And we respectfully ask you to return verdicts of guilty on all three counts.
Mr. Madison, what you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
Okay, a simple wrong would have done just fine, but
You remain one.
Give your attention to counsel for the defense.
Oh, factually correct.
Yep.
My brain is mush.
Hey, what's up, Puffer?
Hey, Puffer.
Your Honor, thank you.
Oh, wait. Midstream grift. Because you put it up there like 10 minutes ago and I missed it. I was going to wait till the end. Shit, where is that? Please hit that like button and make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. Also, don't be a digger. Switch to love chat. Thanks, digger.
I want to be really clear about something. Really clear, because nothing could be more important. And what I'm about to say in the next 45 minutes or an hour is what I'm about to say right now. The state of Ohio started their closing argument saying there's two options, suicide and homicide. They just sat down and said that they've shown by a reasonable doubt that this was not suicide. That is not what this case is about. This case is about whether Matt Moore killed that woman. The state of Ohio wants you, and you know what? We picked you because you are the right jury for this case, and you are smarter than this. They want you to go into that deliberation room and treat it like a movie or a puzzle, or I guess we're talking unusual suspects in books now. They want you to go into that jury room and talk about, did she kill herself or did somebody kill her? That's not what this case is. What you have to go into the deliberation room and discuss is the charges against Matt Moore, the elements of the offenses, and whether or not they have proved beyond a reasonable doubt, not suicide or homicide, that he killed her. The judge has read you the instructions. And there is an incredibly important instruction that reads, you cannot stack an inference upon an inference. You can draw from one set of facts an inference. From the same set of facts, you could draw another inference. But you cannot draw an inference and an inference. And so what does it mean? Literally, 6 days of testimony, 7 today. It is, did she commit suicide? No, she didn't commit suicide. So she must have been killed. Well, if she was killed, it's Matt Moore. That's inference stacking, not supported by the evidence. I literally, as I sat there listening to the closing, and I recognize that these arguments are arguments, and so I'm going to say this. 24 years, over 150 jury trials, I've never had a harder closing argument than this, because honestly, in most, I've got evidence to attack. This case is totally speculation.
Burn.
I watched that clock at 1:50 p.m.
Damn.
on August 25th, 2022. I remember telling you, jurors, that times were important in this case, and when I said that in voir dire, I had no idea how important. At 1:50 on August 25th, 2022, I heard, no, you heard for the first time that the state thinks Emily was killed in the woods. And if any one of you thought when they heard that now he followed her on the walk, and you said to yourself, oh, so that's their theory? That's reasonable doubt. At 1:50 p.m., we heard that for the first time. Our justice system has to be better than this. And you know why? Let's go through it. And before, and you've come to know me.
Digger, it has to be in
I
Ohio.
am
though.
passionate, but I am not passionate without a purpose. This inference stacking that I just talked about, it's speculation. And there is no question.
She's pretty good.
The law says circumstantial and direct evidence are of equal weight. There is no question about that. But here is what is not evidence. Speculation. We think he did this. We think he did that. Now we think she went for a walk and Matt, because of a text he sent on May 7th to his friend, that on May 24th, after they've had a nice day together, that he now is lurking and going and following her and killing her in the woods. That's not just one inference and upon an inference. It's probably 8 or 9 or 10. But it's speculation. Members of the jury, I remember when we did that voir dire so well, we talked about why we had to do voir dire. It's because not every juror is perfect for every case. We went back and forth, and we both asked you questions, and you saw us ask some people to leave because they weren't right for this case. But you were. You are smarter than to think a man could be convicted of murder based on speculation. In fact, I think the only thing that has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt is that they think he did it. For sure. Now that, for sure, they've proven that. But let's talk about what else they haven't proven. I want to go, and trust me, I'm not going to show you Defendant's Exhibit D again. I won't show you the map. Okay, I know we've had enough of the map, but I do want to talk to you just about why it's so important.
Is it on the wall?
I'm just going to, of course, you've read the instructions and you have that. And he's going to tell you that the state of Ohio doesn't have to prove the exact date, but
Was what?
generally around the date and time.
She was
But
talking
you
about the
know
map.
from the way that Matt Moore
Oh.
has been charged,
Map.
and more
Just asking
specifically,
if it was on the wall.
you now know from their closing argument that what they're telling you is that he was killed on the 24th. That's what they just told you in their closing argument. Now, I realize that their argument, but they have burden. They just told you she went for that 8 p.m. walk with John Kramer, and he kills her after that. Hold them to that. So the searches, why is it so important? Well, it's important because, well, first of all, if she's not in the woods on the 24th or 26th or 27th or 28th, first element of their case fails. And the judge is going to tell you, when you go back in the deliberation room, you look at each and every charge element by element. On or about May 25th and May 25th, did defendant Matheau Moore in Delaware County purposely cause the death of Emily Noble? They're numbered 1, 2, 3, 4. If one of them fails, you're done. You don't even have to talk about it. So if the date fails, you're done. If identity fails, you're done. Identity being Matt Moore, you're done. If purpose fails, and I'm going to talk a lot about purpose, you're done. It's not that they have to prove all of them. Any of the elements fail, they're done. That's the law. So here's why the searches matter. If she's not in those woods on the 24th or 25th,
I'm going to be
26th,
represented
27th,
by a cute, cuddly
Done.
duck with a rabbit partner.
27th, there's a GPS on his car.
My
What?
strategy.
You know, I
Yeah,
want to talk about
100%.
transparency of things or lack thereof. I know you
Okay.
noticed it. It's like I have to bring up GPS with Detective
Quackers
Brooks.
and hops.
Like, here's an investigative tool that you use to track my guy, and you don't even want to bring it up. You can't, you witnessed how many instances in this trial did the state of Ohio wait to see if I did my job. Not just the GPS, the counseling records, the osteopenia, the list goes on. Never bring up any of these things. They wait to see, what can we get away with? Is defense counsel good enough? So back to the searches. She's not there, the 24th, 25th, and let's talk about it. It's not just humans and dogs. No one sees her, no one smells her, but I want to just talk about this whole theory that they've put forth that it's just bad police work, that they didn't go into the woods. Members of the jury, you are smarter than that. And I remember I was talking to Sergeant Alloway. Do you remember the press conference? And he refreshed his recollection and came back and told you all that the chief of police told Westerville community and the public at large, we searched that area 3 times with law enforcement and once with dogs. Nobody said the perimeter. And here's what else we know. If I'm Matt Moore, and I think what's the word?
Quackers and ducks.
We're going to talk about whether Matt Moore is the main criminal mastermind in a second.
Quackers
He
and
takes them
whatever the hell I said
to the
earlier.
exact area.
Yeah, quackers
And
and
says,
ducks.
this is where she forwarded it.
Sure.
And then even the state of
Yeah,
Ohio and their
something
closing
like that.
argument
Quackers
just
and
now had to
hops.
concede
There you
that.
go.
Do you know what he says?
Yeah.
You might want to go in.
Hops doesn't talk
Ooh,
much,
that's a bad
so you
fact,
forget
right?
his name.
And you know why he wouldn't
Right.
want to go in? Is it because he doesn't want to find her? Actually, I agree with that. You know why he doesn't want to find her? Because 10 months earlier, his son was hanging from a tree in the woods. I wouldn't want to go in a wooded area either. Let's talk about motive. Judge, of course, has told you they don't need to prove motive. We talked about this in voir dire. Totally agree. That's the law. What the law also says is that the absence of motive, that is, if you say, I just don't see a motive, is something you can consider when finding that he doesn't have the intent. So here's why it's important. Now, again, you notice, of course, that I had to bring up the other bank account, right? There was the one bank account, and then it's kind of like, let's see if Menashe can do her job. So now you know you've got the one bank account with 90 plus, there was a joint, and then of course there's the other bank account that's 90 plus, and then of course I had to bring out that there was life insurance.
Oh,
which my
Queen,
client
you
never
know.
filed a claim against. So let's get rid of any thought that there was a money motivator. And then the bank accounts. They talked to you about those
Quackers
checks.
and ducks.
Now, there's one person in this jury that thinks to themselves,
Quackers and hops.
what about those checks?
Hops.
Yeah, quackers
Hops.
and hops. Let's
Yeah.
let's end this once for all, Queen. Quackers, hop. My attorneys.
And hops doesn't say much.
Does not say much at all. Yeah, I mean, do you really want to get into an argument with quackers and hops?
No.
Quackers is a badass, and hops is just that silent stare. So, bring it.
I just want to hold them and pet them.
She wants to assault my lawyers.
Yes.
Yours here. So where's Arturo and where's Paul? But I also want to tell you about the checks.
Well, it'd just be battery.
Well, walk.
That's true. Yeah.
Checks are Paul.
Just batter a little bit.
So that's incredibly relevant. And the check to Arturo isn't dated June 6th. So that's incredibly relevant. You have them in the back. And if you wonder where they are, you clearly know that they have all the power in the world to issue subpoenas.
And it would be chocolate, and you'll be so confused. Be like, do I eat it or is it shit?
Just even by admitting those checks,
Both.
Yes.
it's like that expression
It's
that we
always
all
both.
know when you just throw things up and you see what'll stick. So then back to the motive or lack thereof. They presented 3 family friends, Amy, Sue, and Brandy. And I guess this is what the state calls part of the edge of their puzzle. Well, the friends were so close that they hadn't had contact
You
with
hope
Emily
it's
since
a Cadbury egg.
2019.
Yes.
In fact, Sue was last called by Emily when Joey died, and she never even called her afterwards to check in on her.
I think
So-
hops may.
I'll leave it to you as to the extent of that friendship.
Make-
And of course, her sister testified. And it's so funny too about
Little
Sixlets.
Matt doesn't go into the woods
What?
and search for her. And so that
Sixlets?
inference should lead you to the fact that
They're
he
little
didn't want to find
colorful
her, and that
candy
should lead you to the
chocolate
fact
balls.
that he killed her. I remember asking Amy
They kind of look like rabbit
about
shit,
the fact that she didn't come to Ohio
Oh,
but they're
and search for her
colorful,
sister was no indication of whether she
Oh.
loved her sister or not.
unlike rabbit
She
shit.
said that's right.
right.
Why is it
Because
okay for
rabbit shit's
some
brown.
and not for others? And the counseling records. They want to tell you that Emily was happy, she was foraging, eating plants, nettles.
Okay, this is the last time I'm interrupting you. Sixlet.
Oh.
Yeah.
Never heard
See?
of it.
They look like rabbit shit, but they're colorful.
They're just, yeah,
The more you
rainbow
know.
colored shit.
So there's no way she could have committed suicide. This takes me back to my opening, when I told you that this is a case about common sense. When we talked about suicide in voir dire, and we talked about mental health. And I really mean this. We are all smarter, and I know each and every one of you, truly. If mental health were that simple, we would live in a much different world. It's not. It is not that simple to say, they seem happy. It's just not. And in fact, we know that just from history, right? We know that Emily's first husband, you heard her sister testify that they seemed like two peas in a pod and that he killed himself. And it was a surprise to her, Emily. And so I want to just go to the counseling records. And I don't do this in any way to disparage. I do it because it is an inaccurate statement to say that Emily was happy and eating plants.
Huh.
And would
In
never
very
kill
rare
herself.
circumstances, I'll eat them.
Because
They're
the
not
truth
like
is,
my
and you'll see in
favorite,
the
but
counseling records,
every once in a while.
that Emily had a history of depression and
Nah,
anxiety.
I pass.
She had struggled
Pretty much,
with prior
yeah.
loss and trauma. Look through the records and see how many times you see the word
I don't
trauma
know.
and
Is
loss
it?
and grief and sadness. Also, with respect to motive, flip through all the records, and these are Emily's statements made to a therapist in a safe space.
Hey, what's up,
Right? You have
Broncos?
text messages sent quickly when you're maybe having a beer in the middle of the night, or
Hey,
you're,
Rocco's.
you're doing bro talk. This is what you say to your therapist.
Yeah,
This
that's
is a safe place.
the previous
The
guy
only
is
thing she understands
wished
about
I come
Matt in these
Wolverine.
records is that she's
Mhm.
Piece of
worried
shit.
about his well-being.
The
Because Matt was
biggest.
depressed too after Joey's suicide. She never says,
Not like
"Someone's
Hops's
mean to me,
little
somebody
shit.
hits me,
Right.
I'm being abused, verbally, physically, nothing." And I ask you, these counseling records, you will have them back there. Defendants, notably, defendants exhibit.
It's worth trying, Jacob.
Pass them around.
I mean,
Look at it.
throw a couple different things at the wall, see what
Please.
sticks. Kind of like
Pass
the
it around and
defense
look
or
at it,
the
because the
prosecutor did
narrative
in this trial.
Of suicide wouldn't happen. She had told her friend she wouldn't kill herself. Well, that's a false narrative. And something else about that hit me.
God, I love me some
Suicide were that
peeps.
simple.
They're
Oh,
so good.
gross.
If
Oh, don't even.
you knew
Yeah, that's
when someone was
gross.
going to commit suicide,
Oh, Dog
By
Mama just got
logical-
banned for life.
by logic, wouldn't suicide not even exist? Because if you knew someone was going to hurt themselves, you'd stop them from hurting themselves. This is the
I
thing
like
about mental
jelly
health.
beans.
You don't see it coming,
Ew.
and nor does the person.
Different
and you know why
strokes.
these friends and family members
The
had these
Starburst kind.
conversations with Emily about whether she'd kill herself? Ask yourselves when you're back in that deliberation room, are these conversations you have with your friends?
The Easter Bunny
Or are
brings me
these
special ones.
conversations friend checks that people were having with Emily because they thought she might kill herself? Because I can tell you, I don't ask my girlfriends at drinks, are you going to kill yourself?
Yeah, it's not
I would
normally
only
a
ask that question to a girlfriend that
topic.
I thought just might
No.
do that very thing.
Well, it's an election year, buddy. It's gonna get so much
The text
worse.
messages.
So much worse.
I promise you that my
Yes.
closing will not be as long as the stack. This is why I brought this stack up. 1 year of text messages between Matt and Emily Noble sits right here. This is what
That's a
they do.
ream of paper.
They give you this.
Mm-hmm.
They give you text messages from November of 21st. Hi, thank you. On the second page of that, he says, "Why does it bother you so much? Am I mean?" Page 63, not mean, unintelligible. and read the rest of it, how they communicate with one another. Because I submit to you that when the state of Ohio tells you how couples act, right? Like how they told you how
I
Matt
will
should have
take
acted
Hobbs
when Emily went
if he
missing.
loses the case.
We're smarter than that too. Every couple's different.
Mhm.
We're not
Every
making
couple's
anything out of
different.
him.
Every person's
I will
different.
keep him
So to normalize certain
pet him.
behavior and to say, oh, well, if you woke up
and
you
keep
saw your
him
spouse
away
gone,
from the
first thing you
dogs.
do would be to call
That would be a
911.
mess.
We're all different. And I bet if you look at these text messages, you might well think, I don't text like that with my spouse. Or you know what you might think is what I think is like, wow, is that enough? I better watch my text, right? And then going to the next set of text messages from December, New Year's Eve, he says, I don't want to argue. If you don't have anything positive to say, keep it to yourself, please. And he's literally asking her, try and be positive. Read these text messages because they gave these to you. They gave these to you to prove motive. I submit that not only do they prove lack of motive, I want to go to this one, where he says the latest set of text messages, by the way, is from March. She kills herself in May. March. I'm not feeling very well today, Matt says. I'm just going to stay in here today. I don't feel like talking. Are we going to the party or what? That's the last set of text messages you have. Of all those, that's what you have. And with the fighting or the argument, I bet John Kramer was right. He heard loud voices 2 weeks prior. And if none of us have ever not raised our voices inside of our houses with our partners, bless you. But every couple's different. And you know what John Kramer said that he didn't hear? Was any arguing on the 24th or 25th. And there was even a jury question where I got the dates wrong initially. Like I think I said the 25th and 26th. And one of you asked a great question. John Kramer, is your testimony still the same about not hearing any argument from the 24th or 25th? And he said yes. He heard no argument. And we know he saw and heard everything because he's right there. And he was what we call a nosy neighbor. He's right there. He heard or saw nothing. 50%, and this is common sense, of relationships end in divorce. And those that stay together, well, I submit that some of them shouldn't, and those that do probably
crap,
argue
we
every
didn't
once
put the
in a while.
cage on.
Here's my point. When you
I
look at
know.
these text
I'm
messages
over it.
with respect to
Okay.
It's already too
divorce
late.
or not wanting to
Too
be
far
together
gone.
or those kind of things, the only time divorce is mentioned is when Matt says, if you want to divorce me, leave me. Just tell me. Never in here, and you heard me ask the detective, does he say, I hate you, I want you dead, I'm going to kill you, I will hurt you? Nothing. Please read them.
Which is amazing because you should see the text messages I send to my mods or the Discord messages. They're nothing but things like that.
Yeah.
The house.
Ask them.
Well, I
They'll
guess
tell
now
you.
that there was all that evidence about the house, now we know from the closing that the state believes she's killed in the woods. And so the attic and the cars and the no trace and the no fiber and the no DNA and the no blood, I guess all of those now aren't as relevant. Still, though, relevant seems to be the fact that Matt is being seemingly prosecuted because of all of the interpretations of the ways he behaved. But he let the officers in, he gave them consent, he gave them phones, he gave them DNA, access to the attic, access to the house, all the things that Matt did. And you heard those women talk about how to get from one side of the foraging section to the other, they either had to crawl or they all got burrs. Remember that? And then you guys asked questions about scratches. Okay, well, of course, we know that they have Matt's shirt from that night. And we now know that they believe that he killed her when she went for a walk. Okay, so I guess we're drawing inferences. They come home from the bar. Emily changes to get ready for her walk because she's wearing her walking clothes. And then Matt follows her for an unknown reason. And we don't know if he's, according to the state's theory, changed his clothes or not, but we certainly know what he was wearing at the bar. They have that shirt. No burrs, no scratches, no rips, no blood. Remember that question about might you have a fracture in the nose if you have blood from a fracture in the nose? Nothing.
Nothing. At
And
all.
the shirt from the criminal mastermind is in the hamper.
You would think you would
That's
leave
the
something
hamper and
behind.
still not washed.
Mm-hmm.
I want to just talk about the police work. It's one of those things that no matter how many times you say it, it doesn't make it true. No one else would do this. No one else would do this. Okay, well, no other suspects were ever developed. We know on the 25th, he's taken into the police station. He's asked to come down in the back of a cruiser. And you saw one of your exhibits is he was read his Miranda rights. Right? This is on the 27th of May. He's their guy. In fact, they continued to work from May 25th all the way to June 17th of the following year to charge him. Because they kept just looking until they finally found Dr. Smock. Right? And Dr. Smock arrives in May. Because if all this evidence that they've given you is actually evidence, they charged him in June 2021. So the police work. There's no other suspect developed. And if their theory is he's the only one, well, of course, we know that actually, based on the evidence, the last person to see Emily was John Kramer. We also know what are the odds that two sets of dogs, almost 2 weeks apart, went to the same house after searching for scent. And I asked the detective, did you interview the man that lived in that house? Yes, we did. Where is he? What are the odds? And that was the purpose of my question about that was two different sets of dogs, one in May and one in June. And do you remember when Sergeant Alloway was up there? And I said, so the second set of dogs went up here. And Sergeant Alloway goes, actually, they went right back down to the house, the driveway where the first set of dogs went.
Oh, shit. Huh.
Where is it? Where is that investigation? Well, we don't have it because of tunnel vision. Police officers ignored Emily's mental health history, her drinking. We know that she had the situation in 2017 where they found her in Westerville. They just ignore it. Just like they ignore, initially in this trial, they wanted to sell you on the narrative that Emily never left her house without the phone. How many times do we hear that? It's like, and then it takes me, Diane Menashe, like it's our burden. I have to bring the cell data out. And I have to show you what's been marked as defendant's exhibit B. She leaves the house all the time without the phone, particularly as of late. And let's just put aside the fact about the walk now that they say she took on the 24th. It seems like on the 24th she left without her phone too. And guess when else she left without her phone? The 22nd, because she went foraging with Celeste. And here's why I mentioned this and why I put together this demonstrative aid and cross Detective Grubbs on it. Because when you have tunnel vision and you literally get rid of things that don't fit with your narrative, right? That's not fairness. That's not proof beyond reasonable doubt. Kind of another example of the tunnel vision was just today you hear Dr. Bolte. He did that report. He went out to that scene twice with the Westerville Police Department. It was odd to me that the prosecutor was crossing him on using a 10-foot cord and was like, why didn't you use a 20-foot cord? Because your own police officers told them to use a 10-foot cord, And so they're crossing the expert that they got. And here's what's the whole value, if you will, of John Bolte, if nothing else. When was the next time you heard from anyone in this case after you wrote your report?
Never.
Because they got the report, they got rid of John. Just like they got the report from University of Tennessee. Where's she? And here's what I want to say also about the cell data. And this is critical, and I know you didn't miss it, but I have to say it. John Kramer. It's an interesting thing, the phenomena of excusing some for inconsistencies, but never matter. Like, their witnesses sit up here and say, I need my report to refresh my recollection about dates. And we say, of course, dates are hard to remember. Matt gets something slightly wrong, and he's a killer. John Kramer, for the record, did not retract his testimony or his statement to police. What he said is he can't be positive. He's not positive now that he saw her on the morning of the 25th. That's what he said. That's what he said. And so how do we know when John really did see her? Because if he didn't see her on the 25th, what he told you is he saw her the day before.
It is interesting.
So it takes me to get the location data up on the screen to show that Emily is in Butyl, Ohio, the day before at 9:39 a.m. Then I have to ask Detective Grubbs, how far is Butyl? Hour and a half each way. This is why it is dangerous for the state to have tunnel vision. I know they want John Kramer to see her on May 24th. I know they do. But guess what? John Kramer saw her on the 25th when she went for a walk. And he was the last person to see her. He was the last person to see her. We know that from the cell data. We know that from the cell data, that he saw her on the 25th. And now they want to say that he retracted that. Members of the jury? You need to look no further than Defendant's Exhibit G to know that is absolutely not true. Another Defendant's Exhibit. Westerville press release, released on May 26th. May 26th. Emily Noble, 52, was last seen around 9 a.m. Monday, May 25th. They just told you in their closing argument that John Kramer right away withdrew his statement. That's not true. It's just not true. It's not true. And you're smarter than that. And you know what else? I wrote down in the statement, gotta love the body cam. Couldn't agree more, but isn't it interesting that in their burden of proof, they didn't actually follow and give you the Hollis interview with John Kramer outside on the body cam? I know you're smart enough to notice that. They cut that out. Because remember, Hollis goes outside and interviews Kramer, and he comes back inside and tells Matt, the neighbor says he saw her between 9 and 10. And I'm going to show you that clip. I'm going to show you that clip. Where, if you gotta love the body cam, where is it? Show it to us, because it's your bird.
That's awesome.
All this stuff about staging. Staging.
One of the
First all,
prosecutors
Dr.
was
Smock,
laughing
in closing, they said that Dr. Smock
when she said that.
is the most
Huh.
experienced or
The
qualified expert
weasel
they've
looking
heard.
one.
I'm gonna let that sit there. Judge is gonna tell you that reasonable doubt is doubt based on reason and common sense, and it's the kind of doubt that you would rely and act upon in the most important of your affairs. Heather Garvin, when I asked Dr. Heather Garvin, who is a board-certified forensic anthropologist, how many citations or articles or literature did Dr. Smock put in his report? She said none. So I just compare this as an analogy. If you go to a doctor and they say, you say, I got pain in my knee, and they say, let's open you up, do surgery. Don't
Yeah,
you
shouldn't he,
say,
Mr.
maybe we should
Ginger?
take x-rays, maybe we should do a little investigation, maybe we should get a second opinion. Not with Dr.
Oh, the one
Smock,
in the
because
back?
he says,
Mhm.
they say,
Yeah,
those
the
studies are
weasel one.
meaningless. And then they
okay.
spent all this time talking to you about how there isn't a study of a 100-pound woman with the bilateral fractures from a hanging. I mean, how much do we hear about that? Well, if that's the case, when you go back in the deliberation room, look through all these exhibits and look your notes and check and see where is the article that a 100-pound woman with bilateral fractures died of manual strangulation. Where is that article? Or better yet, where is the article that says that I can have a USB cord wrapped around my throat in a way that we don't really know. And then as I collapse and I decompose and my head drops from the decompression, that the ligature doesn't move. Or that the weight of my head, 10 to 12 pounds, is my skull. Remember how much pressure you needed, right, to kill yourself. Less than 10 pounds. The skull alone is 12 to 10, or 10 to 12. And then I guess in closing, Mr. Sleeper said, Miss Benashie got on the ground and she didn't even know how to show you. I completely agree, because I have no idea. Who knows? He said in his closing argument,
Digger's been yelling that from the rooftops for the past
during the
like
beginning of this
6
trial,
hours,
sat
it
there
seems
and
like.
thought, what is going on? I submit to you, you're still sitting here thinking,
I
what is
swear
going
this
on?
trial just
Who
seems
knows?
to
We
drag.
don't even know how the ligature was
Yeah.
around her neck because there are no photos. And they want to talk about this perimortem trauma. I'm going to go there for a second. We know that perimortem trauma is days, weeks, or months. Within that time frame is September. September is months. That's why it's so important. And here's what else you know. Pull that cord out. It's like this, 4 to 5 inches. It's like this long, which means that when Chad Holcomb went to cut it, he cut one side first, real close, because you never heard him say, I cut both sides at the same time, or two of us cut. And what happens when one side gets cut, right? The weight of the branch deflects. And now we know 3 inches. Do you not think that the branch pulled her up? And then we have the man, Charlie Carlson, that said, I held on to her with, and that's why I said, put your hand up. And this isn't videoed or documented. We have
No.
nothing. We have nothing. And how many times do people say
Nothing
how
at
fragile her
all.
bones were?
Nope.
Perimortem is within that month frame time. Now, again, I don't have a burden to prove that she killed herself.
I love the way she just says, I don't have the burden.
Right.
And this is the staging. I'm just sorry, going back. Won't surprise you. Jump around. Please, this picture is everything. It's everything because this has all been made out to be so horrific, right? What really happened is Emily went to nature to find her peace. And you'll see that in the counseling records. That's where she found peace. She went there and she grabbed her ankles. You know why she grabbed her ankles? So that she wouldn't stop herself from killing herself. And that's what you do. That's what you do because you know that when you kill yourself, your natural instinct is going to be to stop it. That ankle is grabbed. And here's what else we know in terms of the mastermind criminal mind over here. There's alcohol in the water bottle. Her vape pen is in her left pocket. And a vape pen on her left side within her reach. Do you know what we do? What's common sense when we're in moments of real stress? We turn to our vices, right? We turn to our vices. And here's else what we do. So if we're going to kill ourselves, we don't want anyone to know. We don't take an orange cord in the garage because we know she's wearing leggings with pockets. We take something that fits in our pocket so that we can go on our walk with our water bottle and no one will think anything but it was. And in fact, she was right because John Kramer saw her going for a walk and he didn't see anything abnormal.
Good point.
I want to talk about the science and the statistics about Matt. The credibility or lack thereof is for your determination. Again, I can't say it enough. I feel like this whole trial, 40-some minutes of the prosecutor's closing argument was about how this isn't a suicide. We don't have a burden. But with respect to your job as a juror, it's to determine the credibility of every witness. And the judge has already told you that you can believe, disbelieve any, all, or none of a witness's testimony. That's totally up to you as a juror. I submit to you why this is so important and why Dr. Garvin, not just because she was asked to do the work of reviewing Dr. Agnew's report, but why I went through the age and the ancestry and the other things, is because if someone isn't doing their work, best practices, according to what should be done in forensics, right, that goes to their credibility. That goes to the weight that you should give their testimony. And here's what we know about Dr. Agnew's report and the other experts in this case. We know that there's the Montgomery County Coroner's report, there's Dr. Agnew's report, there's Dr. Smock's report, and there's the death certificate. Every single one of these, Dr. Smock, Montgomery County, and the death certificate relied on Dr. Agnew. They told you that. Every single one of these. And members of the jury, I know how annoying it can be. Sometimes with my histrionics and my garbage in, garbage out, and my things. You know what? This is why I said it. This is why I said it in fourth year. This is garbage in, garbage out. You heard from a board-certified forensic anthropologist who said there are no perimortem fractures to the nose. None. With respect to the perimortem fracture to the hyoid and thyroid, she said that anthropologically, they appear perimortem. We don't know when those breaks happened, though. We don't know. And if we don't know and you don't know, that's reasonable doubt. And so here's the thing about garbage in, garbage out. If Agnew goes, they all go. And the judge is going to give you an incredibly important instruction about that.
That was powerful.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to tell you about experts. Give me 1 second because I don't want to misstate it. Thought I highlighted it. He's going to tell you, members of the jury, it's similar to the instruction that you can believe, disbelieve any, all, or part of a witness's testimony, is that if you don't believe Agnew and the other experts relied upon that opinion, they all go.
It's reasonable.
Yeah.
And John Bolte and Heather Garvin, we have no bird to call them. And I do want to address, in case a member of the jury goes in the back and says, well, Ms. Menashe in opening said that she was going to call some other witnesses. I don't have a bird. And there is no question that I stood up here in opening and said I was going to call other witnesses. But here's the thing. I didn't need to. I just didn't need to. It's not my burden. I don't need to assume a burden. Heather Garvin directly refuted Dr. Agnew and is much more experienced and qualified than Dr. Agnew. And they want to kind of dismiss the peroxide issue. Well, the bones were soaked in bleach. And we know that bleach weakens and whitens bones. And we know that the bones have perimortem trauma. We also know that the bones were moved everywhere.
She's just
They
a
were
great
moved
lawyer.
to the morgue,
Yeah.
to a cooler, to the slab, to
Attention to
a cooler, to
detail.
OSU, and now
Yep.
they're apparently sitting at OSU.
And even explaining
And I
things
do
the way
want to
she
say, because
does is
I just want to
amazing.
say this about how Dr. Garvin
Mhm.
didn't view the bones. You never heard any testimony that the state offered,
It's not how
my
well you know
expert to see
something.
the
It's how
bones.
well you can explain it.
or that they made
Yep.
the bones available to my expert. And if you're considering the fact that she didn't see the bones, I ask you to consider the absence of that evidence. Did they make them available? Let's talk lastly about Matt Moore. We heard a lot, I guess, the usual suspects. He's a mastermind. He's the same guy. And we're all, if we're not parents, we're siblings and we're children. And he's the same guy that's writing out a statement and asks how you spell the word pouch. He asks how you spell memorial. And Matt, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but he's the same guy that reads while he's writing. When he's writing, he's reading what he's writing. And we all know, as people that have been around children, what that means. And he is clearly, right, not seemingly the most sophisticated person. You've heard him speak a number of times. He uses things like, well, I mean, she's okay for a crazy woman, right? Like, these are the kind of expressions that he uses. It's this same man, though, that would be able to stage a scene, figure out to put the alcohol in the water bottle, put the vape pen next to her because she's left-hand dominant, would tie her shoes so tight that they wouldn't come off, would put her hair tie around her wrist, would take off one of her necklaces, because there's two in the picture on the 24th. He's that same guy. I also just ask you to think about one of the other things that you heard today from Dr. John Bolte. Because remember in the video how he tied the knot close to the branch? And then the basket slipped and the knot actually went tight? Look at those photos, right? Look at those photos, because we know that the branch is taller than 6'3", 6'4". We know that.
Yeah, Shani, I agree. The
The
horribleness
whole-
of the prosecution may be why she is so
Slung over
good.
the branch. It's not knotted at the top. And if you're going to actually stage
But I
a
mean,
suicide
she's
and hang someone from
still
a branch,
very
and
good.
6 feet tall, and the branch is like
Mhm.
right here, you knot it to make sure it stays
She's a
up.
breath of fresh air.
Look at that.
Yep.
She flung it over. With respect to his statements about I didn't do it, he was obviously in the back of the police cruiser being read as Miranda. I don't know if there's one of us that wouldn't say I didn't do it. The use of past tense in the word gone, I obviously cross-examined the detective on the word gone, and his apparent alleged inconsistencies. He's actually been completely consistent about the fact that they came home, during these hours when he's now at the park allegedly killing her, that he was sleeping, that he got up about 1:31 to go pee, to go to the bathroom, and that he was on his phone intermittently the rest of the night. The cell data shows all that. So the time period they're using against him is the time period when he said he was sleeping, when most of us would be. We know that they were out drinking. It was her birthday, and they'd had a long day because they'd gone to Buchtel and then his
Yep.
father's house and then out to celebrate, and we're now home. It goes back to that kind of when Matt is slightly inconsistent, we convict him.
No, but
Well,
he
now
was
you want to
emotional at the
convict him.
beginning of
When
her
John Kramer's inconsistent,
argument.
absolutely
So
not here.
Yeah, he's
but here,
looked
he's
human.
truth-telling. When the
Yeah.
detectives are inconsistent, we excuse the behavior. It just can't have it both ways. So I want to play a couple snippets. Well, first of all, before I do, I want you to remember this. The mastermind, showing you what's marked as defendant's exhibit X1. Remember when he did this? Remember when he did this? And this. And then in this one, when he turns his hands over. And then in this one, when he looks him straight on so he can see his face. As I close, I just want to say that there's a lot made of Matt's use of words or the controlling mastermind. But there's one thing that we all know, common sense tells us, is we can't control our spontaneous reactions to things. We see something, we react. Nobody's smart enough to be able to control that.
mhm.
So I want to play for you 2 clips. We're going to play the clip when Officer Hollis comes back in the house after having just interviewed John Kramer. Look at his reaction. Oops, we need water.
All right. So we found a little bit of information. We still don't know where she is yet. Okay. Your neighbor saw her in the garage about between 9 and 10 a.m. this morning. Said she was just standing in the garage. When he was leaving, he saw her. She was just standing there.
Could that be relief?
This morning. Yeah, around 9, 10 o'clock. He went about his business. 51. Okay.
I don't know what. I
Sorry.
didn't get that.
Oh, you got that he was an axe murderer?
When Matt comes out of his house and he thinks he sees Emily. And this is, of course, on the 25th when he's called 911.
Hey, how you doing? This her? Yeah. That's your wife? Oh, okay.
You look just like her for like a second.
Okay.
And more.
No, I'll try all of it.
Look at how he was just for a second. I thought it was you. And you remember asking me to ask Celeste, you look like Emily W. And in that first video, he says, oh, thank you, right, with his hand. And in the second video, it's like the shock almost took him over and he put his hand on his stomach. Nobody's
I mean, Shenny, why he didn't freak out? That would be logical.
Members of the jury, I just want to close. I know that the state will get up here and they'll have a significant
You would
amount of
think
time
so,
to
yeah.
rebut what I just
You
said.
know,
I mean, that's the way the process works. Nothing they
You
can
think
say,
that?
though,
I mean, he
will
wouldn't
change
freak
the
out.
fact that
right.
what they've given you is purely speculation. And I've honestly, in all these years, I've never done a trial where the judge has allowed jurors to ask questions before. But as I was thinking about my closing and how I wanted to end it, I thought about my ask of you as a jury. I ask you that when you go into that room, you ask yourselves, whomever you pick as your foreperson, write down all the questions you still have. Right? All the questions you still have. Put them on the piece of papers like you did so diligently over the last 7 days and put them all in the middle of the table. Because that stack of questions, those questions that are unanswered, those are reasonable doubt. Thank you.
Brilliant.
Good job.
All right. We'll take a very short break and then you'll hear the rebuttal from the state. Remember the court's admonition this time? We'll be back in 10.
Very short break and then rebuttal. Oh, it's this guy?
Oh, Weasel.
Weaselton.
Weaselton?
Yeah.
Well, that is a good name. It is really blowing outside.
Could be inside too.
At this time, please give your
Anyways,
attention to the representative who provides you with
Snow
the
storm.
So I think I'm gonna
Mhm.
make an executive decision, and because I didn't realize that they had a fucking rebuttal from Weaselton. It's gonna be more bullshit.
Ugh. Yeah.
So that's over another hour. So
Oh.
since we're at 2, why don't we cut for
Uh-huh.
the evening, and we will have one more episode where we go through the state's rebuttal, which we know is going to be bullshit, and then the verdict.
Right. And then have another show after that to
I don't know. We'll see how long we can.
yeah.
No, I'm just
How long we can
kidding.
drag it on.
I'm just kidding. But yeah, yeah, and I'm hoping that I'm hoping you can get. God damn it! If I
What?
can talk.
Gig it?
Blah, 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 blah,
Blah,
blah,
blah, blah,
blah.
blah, blah. Get the dick out of your mouth.
It tastes so good. Anyways, I'm hoping. Fuck you, Doug. I'm hoping we could get Matt. This is entirely my fault. Like I said, gone for the holiday. Then I got
Yep.
my channel yeeted because
Yep.
I'm hateful and harmful or dangerous disinformation or
Something
whatever
like
the hell they said. I don't remember. So, yeah. Let's do that so we can have Matt back for the final.
Alright.
Because I know he specifically had something to say. I'm turning down the volume if you're going to be talking. Is the volume off? Fucky. Sorry.
No, about
Um,
the verdict.
Oh, gotcha. No, I'm not going to talk about the verdict at all. Well, so next week, I know Matt had specific comments on Gingerbread Man here. And so
Gingerbread man.
It's not as funny if you make me laugh. Stop that.
Sorry.
It's supposed to be very serious when I make my jokes because then they hit harder.
Sorry, gingerbread man. Go ahead.
Yeah. So because
He's a
everything
weasel
I'd
thing?
ask Matt is going to be poof gone from my brain. Write it down, Mr. Gingerhead Man.
It's even better.
I like that one. So I know Matt had some comments about that, and like I said, this is entirely my fault for kind of fucking off for the last 2-3 weeks. So yeah, we'll do that.
Mhm.
I want to thank everybody for joining me tonight. If college football is your thing, we're gonna finish up over in Discord and watch the national championship game, or the remainder of it, just hit in the fourth quarter, which has no bearing on the fact that I'm cutting it short tonight.
None.
Realistically, we're at 2 hours. Like that's normal time. Plus there will be some additional streams tonight that I'm going to take in. There is a Falcon 9 Starlink launch out of Vandenberg Air Force Base. That launch window opens at midnight, and then the Chinese Long March 3 with the Einstein satellite will be at 2:20 a.m. Eastern. So, is Joe Biden a super rager? Oh, please send that to me. Fuck you, Comer. What's up, buddy? How you doing, though?
Hey, Gomer.
Yeah, toss that to me. Yes. Let me check for you, because I haven't nailed down the official time. They just give a window until we get closer to launch. So let me see if we have an official launch time. Because I have not checked yet. I knew the window opened at midnight, so I was going to check it after. But liftoff is targeted for 9:06 Pacific time, which would be 12:06 a.m. Eastern time. So 9:06 Pacific time out of Vandenberg Space Force Base in Space Launch Complex 4 East at Vandenberg. So that'll be the first one up at midnight Eastern time, or what did I just say? 9:06. So we'll start coverage about 15 minutes early. So somewhere in the 8:50 Pacific, 11:50 Eastern. And then, like I said, 2:20 a.m. Eastern time is the Long March 3 with the Einstein satellite. And yes, I'm going to continue to say Einstein because I think it's funny. So yeah, those are coming up this evening as well. And yeah, so I think that's going to be it for me this evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you as always for stopping by. I really appreciate it. The light has been going up. Should be at my place at 9:08. It takes a minute or two. Okay, cool. Awesome. But yeah, hope to see you back next week to wrap it up, and hope to see you for the launches this evening over on Rocket Garden Media. So I'll be hanging out over there. Until then, hope everyone has a wonderful evening, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye.
Good night.
Nazi fags.